welcome to another episode of the Influential Nonprofit. I am your host. As you know, I'm Marianne Dersch. I work with nonprofit leaders to master the art of influence so they can ask for and receive all they want, need, and deserve. And I work with a lot of different organizations. I would say most of them are established, have been, 5, 10, 15 at least years old. And I have not focused a lot on startups, and I have a lot of thoughts about that. And I brought Rebecca Rodriguez. She's the author of the Nonprofit Workbook. And Rebecca is a strategist, an outcome master, and an implementation wizard. I feel like I need you in my life for so many reasons. And we're going to talk about starting up a nonprofit. And we're also going to talk about a really cool event that we're both a part of. And that's how we met. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, Marianne. It's good to be here.
All right. I always start with the same question. And that question is, tell me something you're proud of that you don't get to brag about that often.
Oh, well, it absolutely has to do with my son. Just being a mom and watching him grow into the adult that he is now and how he's living out his life, going for it at 1,000%. It's that unconditional love that I think a lot of mothers have for their children, and to watch them flourish. And it's almost like a nonprofit, Marianne. You see them in this little idea stage, and then it's, they grow. And then, just like people, we want organizations to flourish. We want them to thrive. And I'm so honored to be my son's mom. He's 29.
Wow. Okay. My son, I have 3 kids. My kids are adopted. They all have challenges. My oldest is trans. She's trying to find her way. My youngest is autistic, but my middle one, he's just like a low-grade stomach ache, like all the time. And he's always pushing the limits, and he's 19. And he joined, like, sometimes you think, am I ever going to see, and I feel like I'm selfish when I'm saying this, oh, I put so much in, I want to see something out, like, you know what I'm saying? But and I want to knock on whatever this is, particle here. He joined this program for minorities, my kids are Black, minorities, and women to join trades. And so every day he goes to like a different trade, and he is really loving it. And he's still got his part-time job. And I'm just watching him. I told him, watching him like handle his business, awesome. And really thinking about his future in a way that I don't think he really, it's just interesting to see that shift, in them from, some days it's all my fault. Some days I'm the best, but that's okay. That's all right. I can handle it.
It's to me, it's just the greatest privilege in the whole world to be a mom, and good for you. I've always wanted to adopt. I'm about to take steps to become a CASA advocate.
Oh yeah.
Because maybe then I'll get to my adoption, where I take the plunge. But to me, that's such a noble thing. So thank you for adopting.
Thank you. And thank you for thinking about being a CASA. I know that's not what we're talking about today. And I want to say that the CASAs are so important. And okay, I'll just share with you, my sister adopted 2 boys, 8 and 11, and they are in their 20s now, like they're your kids' age. But when they were younger, they had 11 homes in 4 years. And the only constant in their life was their CASA. And he followed them through their whole life. And after they got adopted, he actually retired from that. But it is such an important job, because that is the only person in the room that has no agenda except for what the kid wants. And it's not, I want to say, because I've had CASAs as clients over the years. So, with helping them with their marketing and things like that. And it is not the job for everyone, but the people that it's really for them, and it's a great experience to have. And I do know people who have wanted to adopt, but felt like this was either a good place to start, or decided they weren't really ready to adopt or foster, and that they wanted to learn about the system And that is also, yes, I would encourage anyone who's thinking about it to look into that. All right, well, let's get down to the business at hand. I want to talk about starting a nonprofit. And I want to say first thing, I think most people who start nonprofits don't need to. And what do you think of that?
I agree. I actually wrote a book on the topic, and I pretty overtly present alternatives and really challenge them. And it's a workbook, so there's exercises, and part of my challenge is, hey, if you don't have any social sector experience, go volunteer, for at least a year before you launch your 501c entity, and be a board member, be a committee member, be stuff envelopes, do whatever, but get your feet wet in the social sector, because I love the altruistic bent and motivation that's oftentimes behind it. But there's with 65% of our organizations nationwide not at the sustainable level, that's very telling on a lot of different levels. And for a country as rich as we are, Marianne, there's a disconnect there.
Right. In my lived experience, I don't have data on this, but my lived experience, I meet a lot of people who start a nonprofit from a source of pain in their life. And okay, they had a child who was in the NICU and had a really horrible experience and want to prevent other parents from having that experience, right? I'm just thinking offhand, somebody lost a loved one and is helping other grieving, wives, widows, things like that, like, or a disease or a death, or a triumph, something like that. Like, I want other people to have this. I'll start a nonprofit. Little case in point. A dear person, a friend of mine, fostered and adopted kids, and she started collecting clothes. And now she's got a basement full of clothes that she's ordered and cataloged. Now she's sort of quasi has this organization where people are coming to her and saying, hey, I'm getting placement tomorrow, I need this, right? And if she doesn't have it, she can marshal it pretty quickly. Well, another organization that's my client, Foster Adoptive Care Coalition, they had something like that already, right? They have the restore where, families could come and get stuff. And then I saw on the news, this other person, kind of the same thing. They're collecting clothes and supplies. And I'm thinking, she's like, I'm going to start an nonprofit. I'm like, no, don't. So in my friend's case, Katie, she wound up just taking her program and giving it to the coalition and just saying, here, take it. Which I felt like was a much better, because they have the infrastructure, they can sustain it. I'm not sure what happened in the other situation, but I just think people often have this idea, and which is a beautiful thing, right? To want to alleviate suffering or help other people succeed is a beautiful thing. They often, I don't think, look like, who else is doing this, right? Like, who else is doing this? And maybe I could partner with them or learn from them. And so, like, I think, I don't know, I'm just going to start it. I wonder if that's what you see as well.
Absolutely. Duplication of efforts is very common in our country. And, I do realize that urban areas, there's a difference between urban areas and rural areas, and, and so much. But we can do a better job as a nation as it relates to the social sector and philanthropy and offering programs and services in the communities.
Right.
We can do a way better job.
Right. And like in the rescue world, because I foster dogs, some people get mad and like they won't like the way the one rescue's operating, so they'll just go start their own. It happens all the time. And now you have all these tiny little rescues that are just scraping by. Like, there's a lot of duplication and a lot of confusion in the marketplace. Donors don't know where to go with their money. So I feel like also the underlying thing to this is kind of a scarcity mindset that we have being a nonprofit, where, we have to, scrounge for it, collaboration and, you know, like collaboration and sharing of resources isn't really standard, or, you know, I don't think practiced as much, right? Where you could start to collaborate with other people and eliminate some duplication. But you mentioned before we started this that sometimes your job is to talk people out of starting an organization. What makes you want to talk people into it or encourage them to start an organization, a nonprofit?
Well, so I come from the philosophy of life that we're here on earth for you know, a divine purpose, and some people have multiple purposes, and you know, and some don't, but I think that we have to find our flow, we have to find our destiny, and live that out. I am a firm believer in self-actualization. Being the best Rebecca I can be is my mission.
Mhm.
You know, whatever that looks like, and my desires that I have, I believe are given to me for a reason, and so it's my responsibility to play those out, to watch it unfold. So I've had to extend a lot more grace. I used to be pretty extreme, like, no, don't start another nonprofit, you know, think of an LLC or an L3C or a B Corp or the gazillion other ways you can do philanthropy. But I've also realized again that we're on a journey. You know, your journey, Marianne, is, you know, better than anyone what your purpose in life is, where your flow is. You know, you're on your way to meeting your destinies, if you will. And I've had to learn how to really embrace that and honor that. So my approach has softened over the years, even though I still believe that there are alternatives, and they're really valid alternatives than a 501c3. But I also know that we're here to learn.
Mhm.
And sometimes that involves pain. And as a human, it usually involves pain. And if it's a failed or a struggling nonprofit, you know, whatever it is, you know, maybe we have to go through that to learn whatever it is we're supposed to learn to
Yeah.
fulfill our destiny.
Yeah. And it can, even whether it, I don't even like the labels as succeed or fail, it, because it's
Right.
all information, right? Like if it
Right.
helps you process something, if it, right, or realize something, or you know, get to the next step of your life, then right, that's fine. I often see it as this, that, you know, a nonprofit is different because we have two audiences. So I have a business and you have a business, and I serve my clients and you serve your clients. Like that's it. But if I'm leading a nonprofit, I have two people to serve. I have the people I'm serving, and I have to serve the people who are funding the people I'm serving. Right? It's kind of, it's a double the, and it's not impossible, because every nonprofit was, I always say, every nonprofit was started by somebody sitting at a kitchen table getting mad. Right? Like somebody said, let's change this, and then they work to do that. And you know, like, but it is, I think it's a valid business model. And also any business takes a lot of devotion, but I think this model especially. And is that your experience?
Absolutely. And, you know, it's really interesting, your choice of words, because I actually started in fundraising. I was a fundraiser for 12 years before I deliberately stepped off that path and got into operations. And so I'm more interested in the programmatic aspect, if you will. So it's interesting, your choice of words, Marianne, that a 501c serves two audiences, you know, the constituents who are receiving or accessing our programs and services, and then the donors. And that perspective, that I'm serving the donors, I'm not sure I would choose those words. I think I'm facilitating the donors to, or inviting the donors to participate through me, for them to create change. I know it's common, Marianne, that there's some organizations and some leaders in our sector that will create a program because there's donor dollars tied to it. And
Sure.
that I am not a proponent of at all. So again, it depends if that leaders or that board is a savvy board, if it's a savvy leader, if they're educated and prepared. So thank you for putting it in that perspective.
Right. And because here's what I mean by that is I have to care for two different groups of people, right? And I'll call them serve or care for, to connect with them, communicate with them, update them on outcomes, all those things. And, so, and in a sense of like, and somebody shared this with me and I can't remember who it was. So if you're listening, I apologize. Email me. That, you can feel pulled, right? Like you can feel pulled. And so they say, I'm not looking for, as a business owner, I'm not looking for people to pay for, it's a more of a direct contract. And also I think that, the nonprofit model is also sustainable, right? Like and it's a very sustainable model. So I think like you said, with the right conditions of the board, I love what you said about, take a year, volunteer, check out like the sector. And then after that, see how you feel about diving in and getting something started. What would you say to an organization that has, like, I've seen a lot of startups with sort of a single benefactor, like one person that says, okay, I'm going to fund you for like 3 years. Have you encountered that a lot?
No, thankfully, I've never encountered that. As a former fundraiser, I'm a big proponent with as many revenue streams as possible.
Right.
In fact, in this program that you and I are participating in, the Nonprofit Success Toolkit, there's a line in my white paper, which is for startup organizations to go on to the next life cycle of growth. I say in there, do not be overly dependent on any given funder. We all want, whether that's through our business or on a personal level, we all want as many income streams as possible. So please, people, diversify your portfolio.
In my old company that I worked for, 501 Creative, my president Karen Hammond, she was my boss. She would say, we never want a client so big, right, that we would change how we work. Like if they left,
Right,
we would have changed,
right.
that would change how we worked. And, if we had a client that like, oh, we're doing a lot of work, like she looked at that, say, I just never want a client. Because in the ad world, you get a client and everybody would get on board, you'd lose a client, everybody get laid off. And it was a constant cycle of getting jobs and getting laid off, because that would often dictate that. And so I think it is a very like stable business model. What do you see as the biggest challenges people face when, let's say they're committed and they're in and they're going to do it, and, this is their life's mission? What are some of the challenges then they do face that you see or you help people with?
So my platform is definitely programs. I'm strong on leadership, work culture. In my opinion, the work culture of nonprofit organizations, there's a lot of room for improvement there. So there's so many moving parts. So I'll just highlight very quickly and answer your question. They have to start with enough capital. For one thing, how can you start a business underfunded? It doesn't work.
Yes.
Programs, is there logic models? Is there theory of change involved here? What is your community? What are the other organizations? How are they meeting that particular need? And is there a gap? What is going to be your competitive advantage? So programs is huge for me. Governance, I'm not a big proponent of the traditional board to me, it's too top down.
Yeah.
I love the article, Marianne, of the former CEO from Board Source a couple of years ago, the purpose-driven board. Love that article. And I share that with all my clients. But I'm more of a proponent of sociocracy, which is a more flattened form of governance, where it's more autonomous. So governance and leadership and work culture, technology, we have to learn, and we have to pay for this technology. Technology is expensive. We have to learn how to leverage technology. So, and yes, fundraising absolutely has a part. I think the word, as I was listening to you talking about the donor aspect of it, yes, we nonprofits have a level of accountability and transparency that must be its utmost at all times.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And so how do we handle ourselves with integrity, being accountable, being wise steward of donor dollars, and yet transparent, and realize and extend that grace that, hey, maybe our programs aren't perfect. Yes, we may have a logic model in place. Yes, we're using theory of change. Yes, we've done our homework, but this is a continuous journey. We're all on the path of continuous improvement. We never arrive, but we get better and better with each year.
Yeah. I want to go back to the capital. That's the first thing you said. And here's what went into my mind, because I hear it all the time. How can you raise money to fund something when you have no track record? When so many people want to see, it's like that catch-22. Like, I want to start something, but I need capital. But then the potential investors, donors say, well, what's your track record?
So, and that's where in my workbook, I talk about at least start with 18 months at the absolute minimal. Start with 18 months of operational funds. But ideally, your initial capital will be for 3 years. So even building budgets, even people in our sector, Marianne, need coaching on how to build a budget. Okay. So, I talk about how to build a budget for a startup organization, an idea going into startup. And I think that, the SBA, there's so many tools out there on the internet on how to build a budget. I'm working with an organization right now. They want to start a children's museum, and just at the bare minimal, they're looking at $500,000, and their startup capital is $35,000. So, okay. So if our revenue pie needs to mainly be individual donations, then we need to go out to our community and start rallying support. This is why we're doing what we're doing. Who's in? Who would like to be a part of this? And here are our giving levels. Here's our budget. Have a town hall, have meetups, have Eventbrites. Start getting people in your community involved and a buy-in, and definitely start with individual donations. Because a private foundation who's a grantor, many times through their policies and procedures, the trustees don't even allow seed capital, because they're 4 or 5% that's earmarked for them to give away every year is not for startups. For sure, it's not for startups.
Right.
So don't count on grants. Right. So it's investments. It's either leveraging your home equity loan or your savings or your 401k, or getting your community involved. I mean, you have to do a lot of planning. So that was kind of a long-winded answer. It's not even a complete answer, but even just what I've shared right now, Marianne, is daunting.
Yes. Yeah. And it takes a commitment,
huge.
The capital, the budget, the programs, thinking it all through. So in my experience, my husband runs a biotech startup, right? So people give him millions of dollars, right? Because they're creating something new, and they understand that this may work or not, right? If it works, they hit it big. If not, they get it. And I was like, I went, and I bet there are donors out there who would, you know what I mean? If you showed them your budget and your program and your logic model and said, this is what I want to build, and they would like, I think that there's people you could connect with that have that same startup mentality for a nonprofit, right? Because you're not, and that's probably not going to be the grant from the family foundation that has to, it's going to probably be from individuals in your community who know you or know this issue and believe in what you're wanting to accomplish. That's how I see it. That leveraging those relationships is probably what's going to seed you in the beginning.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in the for-profit, a lot of that benefit is possible equity or kickback from their initial investment. And in the nonprofit world, we don't do it that way, because it's all philanthropic. So
Right.
but really, Marianne's audience who's listening to this podcast, aim for individual donations first. Realize that that's your bread and butter. Your annual campaign is number one. That's the most important. Don't bank on grants. Just don't even go there. As a startup, it's unless you have a super close relationship, it's not going to happen.
I also think people want to go to grants because they're afraid to ask for money because they're new to this business. They might not know quite how to do that. But then I'm thinking about, I volunteer for Stray Rescue of St. Louis. I many years ago, I was in a leadership position, but I just foster my dogs and get them adopted. I keep my relationship very simple, right? And I remember sitting around the table. This was 2001. Probably. And we had, maybe it was earlier than that, late 90s. We had, $400 in the bank and $600 of vet bills. And we're like, oh, and we were just this little ragtag operation. And now it is sort of a $3 million agency. They've launched a capital campaign for this will be their, I think, fourth facility that they moved to 25 years later. I think a couple of things happened though, because I think there's a lot of factors. Okay. One is the biggest factor, I think, was at the time they were dealing with an issue that no one else was addressing, right? So they hit on something that organically that the rescue world was not addressing. Okay. And that boom. Second, the director had a very, like, he's so awkward, he's amazing kind of personality, right? You're great. He was so bad, he was good. You know what I mean? Like,
believable.
It's very believable, very authentic, and kind of gravitated people towards him. And they embraced this identity of just sort of being the ragtag and the startups, and the upstart. And now they're kind of it's interesting because now they're the they're kind of the status quo. That's okay. That's the life cycle. I think there's some just divine timing to things as well, right? Like my sister started a nonprofit but it was through a hospital. But anyway, she was going to launch it, and she had done this research and work. And this was so many years ago, but when Nicole Brown Simpson was murdered, it was domestic violence. And they're like, you have to start now. And she's like, I'm not ready. They're like, you're starting now. Like, we're going now, because there's something in you. We have to capture this energy that's out there for this issue. Go now. You know what I'm saying? So sometimes they're just things that I don't know. I'm like all about the divine woo-ness of all of this. But I think there are just some things in the water, in the air, that just connect to it, and then it catches, that you can't really control for or plan for. That's just what I see.
And I agree with all of that. I think if it's meant to be, it's going to be. If you're walking in integrity and you are persistent and you're flexible and you rally a team, you build a team, it's going to happen. It will never happen as quick as you want, but
Yes.
it's going to happen. It will.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's, there in the stages of development, like, okay, I learned this, like the first stage is ideation. So we have an idea. This is amazing. The second stage is concentration and focus. And that means you're going to do a lot and you're not going to get a lot back for it. And
Right.
most people don't get past stage 2 because they're like, oh, obviously this isn't working. This isn't anything, a campaign or whatever. Obviously this isn't working. We're not getting anything back. But if you stick through that, right, then you're going to start to hit momentum. And I think you're right. People think it's going to happen a lot faster than it does. And it's going to happen how it's going to happen. Like I said, sometimes you hit on a combination of there's a prevailing issue that people are gravitating towards. You have the right personality to mobilize people, like, you know what I mean, you have a community that's open to what you're doing. One of the first people I coached is starting she's she's building an amusement park for kids with disabilities from nothing, but this is like probably her 5th year, and but she worked and worked and worked and worked, and she got the land, and assembled a board, and now it's becoming more and more real every time. But it really does take some I think, I don't know, higher calling, higher driven purpose, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's a purpose driven thing, as it should be. And I think that if you're focused on serving others, because there's some people in our sector, this, Marianne, where it's all about them.
Yeah.
That doesn't work.
Yeah. Yeah. So what would you say, like, let's say you are, one of my listeners here is they've gotten through the startup phase. What is that? Because you were talking about, like, what is the next phase then? What are they working towards?
Sure. They're working toward growth. So, so many different people have different life cycles in a business. In the nonprofit life cycle stage, depending on who you talk to, it's idea, startup, growth, maturity. Then it could be decline. And then it's either turnaround or terminal. So hopefully we all want to go to maturity and stay there and be organic and be strong.
So wait, can you idea, startup,
growth, maturity. And which in my mind is you've reached that level of sustainability.
Sure.
Dollar wise, for me, I seem to sense a real collective, like, relief, sigh when an organization's around that $5 to $7 million range. It seems like everybody just goes, okay, we've got sufficient reserves. We're going. We're a brand now. But then things happen, Marianne. I'm sure you've seen organizations, even if they hit maturity, and sometimes in the startup phase, they'll start declining,
Right. I got complacency, right? Like everybody relaxes and then hold on. They relax a little bit and then they see themselves in decline. There's a lot of reasons though an organization could decline, and maybe it's because they're actually solving the problem that they intended to solve, right? And
Sure.
they're not as needed anymore. They're needed in a different way. If you look at somebody like the March of Dimes and how they started and what they're doing, they in different, like, oh, I can't think of the name, so I'm not going to bring it up. Anyway, then also, yes, I have seen organizations, go decline. And then, so after decline, it's turnaround or terminal, right?
Right. And I think at the decline level, some people can ignore that, or some people can acknowledge that. So much of it depends on that leadership. So if the leadership in the decline stage says, no, we have too much at stake, we're going to turn around this baby, there's probably a turnover in management and everything, really, for that to be a successful turnaround, or people may ignore that they're in decline stage, and that'll just become terminal.
Yeah.
It'll just die off. And I think we're going to come to a place within the next 10 years where we start seeing more organizations merge, like for-profits. We need to. Why don't we just start merging more? We certainly have a plethora, an overabundance of entities.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
Well, and often like the merge, that's a whole nother podcast about mergers. And I have been through many of those, and that's a we need a cocktail to get through those. But I do, hear organizations, I talk about merging or strategic alliances and things like that. And I think that is really good. And I do wish it happened more. And also, sometimes it's okay for things to end, right? Sometimes things have just fulfilled their span, and you're like, that was great. And we did, or maybe you're dealing with an issue that, it's has some timely, or it's just, time to end. And I just think sometimes people think, oh, if we're in a client or we're terminal, to releasing judgment from, like, it's just okay to let go. Sometimes it's, like you said, like talking people out of starting it, also helping people just accept that it's okay that sometimes things end.
Well, and we wanted to end positively. I read something recently where, and the gentleman was talking about the social sector, and I hope I do his quote justice. It was something like, your job as a startup is to get out of business as soon as possible.
Yep.
And he meant because the need's been met. And I loved the way he said that, because I don't think we think that look at research of cancer. In Asia, they're curing cancer left and right. And here we still are just raising money to research, cancer, solving that disease, if you will.
Right.
So, again, I think so much of it, the purpose, what is the why?
Yes.
Really, what's the why?
And I remember that too. Like, yeah, your job is to put yourself out of business, to not be needed, right? Because that means you've created something, sustainable change. And I look at, because animal welfare is my thing. What if we became, like, our goal is to become a no-kill city, and like, what if some of the rescue, they just don't have a function anymore, because whatever they were doing, that problem has been solved or somewhat mediated. And okay, so then a lot of organizations then would change their okay, well, maybe let's do training, or you know what I mean, like, or we can just say, you know what, job done, and let's move on. And I have met some people who I've had clients over the years who started organizations and grew them into like amazing institutions. So I know that it can happen.
Yes.
It absolutely can happen.
Yes.
All right. So we're almost out of time. So what would you say right now to a person listening to this who is like, I really feel called? What would you tell them?
I'd probably make a plug for my book. I would say, please go volunteer at an organization that's similar to your idea, and rack up, 50 hours in 1 year. 50 hours, it's nothing.
Sure,
You're going to do that in 1 week, starting your own organization. But get that experience, and try to volunteer for 3 or 4 different organizations in different roles. And especially as part of either the governance or a committee, that reports to the governing structure. that's probably, and then the whole capital thing, Marianne, people need to start with sufficient capital. Don't think that donations are just going to pour in right away.
Right, right. And the book is the Nonprofit Workbook, Tips and Best Practices for Startups Serving the Greater Common Good. So it sounds like right up the alley of someone who's thinking about that. And how do you work with clients? So how do you, like, what is it like to work with you?
Sure. So my love and my flow is really your programmatic aspect. So, we have our mission, and then what supports the mission are our programs ultimately. But then there's the verticals of governance, management, systems and processes, and your business model. How are you going to raise money? How are you going to bring money in the door? So I really like working with programs. I can design programs, I can assess programs, I can adjust programs, I can do anything with programs that what needs to be done. My second choice is really working with governance, because again, I like the sociocratic, the autonomous
Me too.
governance
I
model.
love how you described that. Yes. Like we're all just going to sit around the table together as a team, kind of collapse that hierarchy, which I don't think serves us very well anyway. All right. And let's talk about, so we met because we are part of the Nonprofit Success Toolkit. And it's like, so you have some details. How many organizations? There are 25 of us, I think, consultants.
Around, somewhere just under 25. Yes.
And we all have giveaways. And so, we're launching in November. So it'll probably be a couple weeks by the time you hear this, and you'll be able to go, and people like Rebecca and me and a bunch of other really cool people, and you can download all our cool freebie stuff. So what's your freebie for that? What are you sharing?
I'm doing a white paper on how to take, for organizations stuck in the startup mode, to take them to the growth stage.
Yeah. Okay. All right. They got to, get those stabilizing and right processes and systems and all those things. Yeah.
Absolutely.
And okay, that is wonderful. I will put, and what's the best way to get in touch with you?
You can email me at Rebecca at For the Philanthropist, FORTHE philanthropist.com.
Okay.
My website's www.forthephilanthropist.com.
All right. And we'll put the links to Rebecca, and I see you're on Facebook. People can find you there. And we'll put the link to the Nonprofit Success Toolkit, so you can download all our cool stuff. Not just me, not just Rebecca, like so many other amazing people. And I'm telling you, I love being a part of this, because I'm like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll do it. Because you get to meet so many people.
Yes.
And there's people I knew, but people I didn't know. So I'm glad to know you now and know your work. And I'm hoping that, I'm not hoping that people got a ton of value and really help people think through, is this something they want to do? And if it is, they can get your book to learn how to do it the right way the first time.
Yes.
Well, all right. Okay, really quickly. I didn't even ask where you're located. Where are you out of?
I'm in the Texas Hill Country. I'm about an hour and 30 minutes away from Austin.
Okay, awesome. All right, I'm flying into Austin tomorrow. I'm driving to Fort Worth for a retreat. So,
fun. Yeah.
So, thank you. So, if we are ever, together in town, I love karaoke, and I always sing karaoke. So, what's your go-to karaoke song? What are you going to sing for me?
What is my go-to karaoke song?
Uh-huh.
Oh my gosh, that's such a great question. I'd probably have to say, have I told you lately that I love you?
There you go. Who sings that song besides you?
Isn't it Van Morrison?
Oh yeah, I think so. Oh gosh. You'll have to sing it for me. I can't wait. It's gonna happen. Okay, Rebecca, thanks so much for being with me today on the Influential Nonprofit. And like I said, all her links and stuff will be in the show notes, and I will have the Nonprofit Success Toolkit linked in there with the dates. I think we start November 6th, so we have a little bit of time. And thanks so much for being here today.
Thank you, Mary Ann. I appreciate it. Blessings on everything you do.
Thank you. You too.
Bye-bye.